Okay.
All right, thanks. Welcome to front end pairing. Natalia has interesting discussion. What's going on, Natalia?
So let's start with the thing. We have too many Apollo client instances in GitLab, even across one page. We just normally have as many Apollo client instances as we have Vue applications, because every new Vue app brings a new Apollo client instance. And it leads to some undesired effects that we are fetching the same data twice or even more, and we're caching them separately in a separate Apollo client instances, because every instance has its own cache. Ideally, we should have one instance per page, and we should just store the data we fetch for this page in the Apollo cache for this page. Why? Well, because it's the shared state that costs us nothing. You don't need to build a new Vuex module and merge it into global Vuex or something else. So you can just basically have shared store for free. And we did this for issue sidebar quite successfully, because issue sidebar, if you didn't know, is just like 8 different Vue applications that share the same state. But it would be nice to just make this approach common. So idea, we should have one instance per page. Implementation, there is a boring way. The boring way is just merge all the instances, all the resolvers, all the type policies, put them in the GraphQL.js in lib, and lint against everything else. You want an Apollo client instance, you import it from the lib. That's it. A way more user-friendly or developer-friendly approach would be to try to memorize Apollo client instance. And whenever the developer tries to create a new instance, we just return the existing instance and put in new resolvers and type policies and cache config on top of that. There are methods for them. For this, there are methods that are undocumented. I don't know why Apollo doesn't document its own methods, but I found them in the source code. So there are methods for add type policy and add resolvers.
Oh, wow.
The problem is we cannot read resolvers, because add resolver and add type policy are public, but get type policy and get resolvers are private. Again, I don't know what's the logic in this, but potentially we can end up in the situation where we overriding some kind of resolver. You want to add a new resolver and it has the same mutation name or something that we already have. So I'm not sure if it's a good approach. It would be very developer friendly, because we're not changing the code base. We just have all our creating Apollo instances all across the applications, and we just add new resolvers. But I would be happy to hear what you all think about it.
Are there any configurations that would be incompatible to merge?
Let's think about it. So in-memory cache configuration is mergeable, but I'm not sure about the context, because sometimes we do provide the context part, which is like a single request or something. I'm not sure as well about batch packs, that when we batch queries that we provide. I know that type policies are mergeable and resolvers are mergeable, and possible types we do provide on the global level. But again, they will require some experimentation. It's a good question, because we need to check all the properties we have in cache config to see if they're mergeable.
Would there ever be a situation that we would want more than one Apollo client?
I think even if we do, we will go with multiple clients per application, and you can do it in Apollo provider. You can provide a few clients there, but I don't see the situation in GitLab. From my experience, we always use one Apollo client per application. There was some case in pipeline, so I'm a bit sad that we don't have anyone from Verify PAOP. But I still, we need to check if there are multiple clients actually in the one application, but normally it should be one client to rule them all.
I think that I like the idea of having not the memwise option. I like that, but from the runtime simplicity, like I can just follow and know what's going to happen without I like we've declared the whole interface for the thing. But it does run into how well when at runtime you only need a slice of it. What do you do? And I kind of wonder if we could use we could declare the whole interface in a single place. But then we could use async Webpack modules to only import the bits that are needed at runtime. I don't know if that'll run into performance issues if we're, I don't know, or so like if I was creating a whole bunch of resolvers, I would have the definition for all my resolvers. That's global and standard, so we don't run into name collisions, all of that. But the body of the resolver would be async imported or something. Like that's just an idea. I don't know if I think they're both great options though. But the memwising and like you could memwising with merging is really interesting. That's cool. And but it makes me nervous.
It makes me nervous too, because I'm afraid that we will be overriding some policies or just missing something in the end client. And Apollo client is complicated as a concept in general. So I'm really torn between two. That's why I brought it to pair programming, because I have no opinion on this. I'm just trying to find some decision that is nice. And I know that we have many good developers, so maybe someone comes with some bright idea, because I'm not capable of.
Here's an idea. I'm not trying to say I've hit any of those qualifiers you said before. I just haven't. What if we did memwise with merging, but required unique namespaces? So every time I created something, I don't have to worry about merging into some shared globalish namespace of resolver type names or whatever. But if everything could be namespace of like, and somehow we could either lint or even enforce that, we could get really sophisticated. Maybe even like every time you create an Apollo client, it automatically creates a namespace for you. Like that would be really wild. But namespacing, I think, would be an interesting way to simplify merging and make it way more predictable.
This will work for resolvers, but it won't work for type policies, because I can imagine the page where, for example, for entity, I don't know, group list, let's say it's boards. So in one case, you want everything that you fetch in the subsequent query to be just concatenated to the previous result. And I can imagine that there is a page where you fetch in a group list, but you want to replace the previous data with a new result. And these two policies are conflicting, and we cannot use namespace in here, because group list is a type name in GraphQL, and we're writing the type policy for the same. And this is what makes me a bit nervous on it, because we already have a situation, it's on boards, by the way, where group list has two different interactions. So if you use boards, you can move the issue to the list, right? That's the first one. And the second one is you can scroll down and there will be more issues loading. And these two have different type policies. It took us a lot of time to figure out how to separate these two with arguments. Again, undocumented Apollo magic here, but the main point stands, like, what if we have conflicting policies for the same type?
I mean, that's a situation we're going to run into anytime we have a single client, right? It kind of makes me want to think of like, maybe we shouldn't have type policies. If maybe that's a trade-off.
Unfortunately, with the policy, we have no other options, because we're kind of forced into policies. I'm not loving it, but we are. Yeah. And to merge results, we need to use type policies. Yeah. So what is good in manually merging things into one large global type policies for everything, that it will make developers think and try to separate the situations, because our requests, they accept arguments. We can access arguments in type policy. And with this, we can write conditions like if this is some kind of the page, we do this. So this will make like people thinking a bit more about type policies. I'm probably the only one who likes thinking about this part of Apollo. Everyone is like, what the hell is type policies? No, do not make me write them.
I think I've enjoyed type policies compared to write query. Like I think that's been my experience with it. So I'm not eager to say, oh, let's just get away with type policies. I'm wondering, is there a trade-off? But I think no, you highlight, no, there just needs to be a single owner to this type policy, and that's a big deal. But I love that. Man, I think it's going to make it so, that's going to enhance the reusability and simplicity of the application so much if we can have, rather than every single page creates its own client, its own type policies, everything they need, if we have single owner for this, if I get some of that out of the box, like that would be really cool. That's interesting. But I think then the need for the single owner just begs the question of what would the memoirs look like? Because that's almost like we're going to have a single instance, but we don't have a single owner. And I wonder if, well, maybe type policies is the only thing that we put into the single owner thing. But the other things, maybe they can be a little bit more dynamically.
Yeah, resolvers definitely can, especially if we enforce name spacing. In this particular case, resolvers will be unique, and we're not afraid of overriding, and we have a method to add resolvers to the existing resolvers. And we just basically concatenate all new resolvers. So at least this part can be moved to dynamic one. And we can move type policies to global, like we're doing right now with possible types. So possible types are basically generated by backend from the schema now, and we just put them in the global instance all the time. And you don't need to worry about possible types anymore. You probably remember that before Apollo Client 3, you will need to write this awful JSON with possible types for interfaces and unions and import it from there, put it into Apollo Client, or not anymore. Maybe type policies is a good idea to put in this global namespace too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. That's interesting. Well, I hope discussion has been helpful.
It was. It's really nice brainstorming because I was stuck. And sorry for stealing the pair programming session. It's not programming, it's planning to program, but
I think
the best part of code is talking about code. If you're coding more than you're talking, I think when you're pairing, I think you're doing it wrong.
When I tell family members that I mostly just talk about code these days, they're like, "Oh, so you're not useful anymore?" It's like,
especially with Copilot, like it writes a lot for me now.
That's what that's
that
just
looks good, Copilot. Way to go.
We just talk about what prompts to give Copilot. I like coding so much. I am so depressed. All right. Cool. No, that's a good subject, Nathaniel. Thanks for bringing it up. Does anyone have any issues, or I'm going to force my work upon you all? All right, I'm gonna do it. So I have a test to write, and maybe that's the first thing to do, which would be great. I also have some MRs to review. Either of those sound interesting? Reviewing MRs or testing? Which one? None of them sound interesting.
both.
Testing. We just did reviewing.
Okay, yeah, we did just do review. So let's do testing. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me reset some of the stuff I was doing before I do that.
While you're resetting, can I have a show of hands for who has one huge monitor versus multiple smaller monitors? Hand up for huge monitor. Two.
Well,
okay.
How big is huge monitor?
Well, if essentially one versus
Like more than 20
multiple,
inches? More than 20 inches? Oh,
I would say if you've got multiple monitors, then you don't have one huge one.
I see.
But you maybe you're greedy and have a huge one and multiple. But
I have one small one.
oh.
Same. Same. I'm just using basically my laptop screen because
Yeah,
all
but is
the
that because
traveling
it's in a
and-
cardboard box?
I have two modes. I'm at home mode where I have 3 big monitors or 2 to 3, and then I'm in digital nomad mode like now at the beach in Mexico where I just
Nice.
and it's a completely different way of working. Like I have different workflows depending on how much
See,
space.
I love having two screens. It means you can be doing like, so the zoom's on one screen, but it does mean that the camera is in an awkward position, and like, yeah, so I still haven't decided, and I don't really want to spend the money to test the other. I've done so well with 2 monitors for so many years, but I'm starting to get to a point where I think, well, if I had one big one, camera would be in the middle and I wouldn't be quite so, I don't know.
As an owner of a single one, this is I think it's 32 inches. It's like
Yeah.
ultra wide. It's pretty nice. I recommend it.
Did you convert from 2 previously, or?
Not really. I think like 2 comes in handy if you are using like default Mac window management things where they just kind of float around and don't. But if you use something like when I started here and I got the Mac, it was really frustrating because you can't just like snap windows all around. But if you download something like, I think Spectacle is the
Rectangle. I think.
Rectangle.
Yeah.
Just this morning, because of the small monitor, I changed my rectangle to cycle between 1/2, 1/3, and 2/3.
If you come from Windows, especially like it's built in, that you can just slap the windows over to the left or right or whatever. So, yeah.
So how far are we from the virtual reality Tom Cruise like Minority Report, where we just have the goggles on and move the?
In my to read list, I have like a Medium article about a guy that just works exclusively in VR now, and it seems painful in the eyes.
Did you all ever get like, this is had to have been mid to early 2000s, but it was like, so on Windows it was like some sort of like OS face, but it was like a game. It was like you walked around a room and you could see like your icons or whatever. Did you ever check this kind of thing out?
No.
So it wasn't VR because you're obviously in first person shooter control land, but it was like, oh, I'm gonna open. It was basically what VR is trying to do without the whole VR thing, whatever. I remember using these things as a kid and being like, thinking they were so cool. Like, gosh, everything was so cool when I was a kid. All right.
Anyway, sorry, Paul, that's my fault. But I think I might take a punt on a larger one, but not an obscenely expensive one, and see how I get on.
Yeah, go for it. I find myself, I have one monitor is really good. 2 monitors I get isn't good for me. I end up needing to close a lot of stuff. I can't have a lot open, so it's not.
Is it just because you're a hoarder, basically, and the more screen real estate you've got, the more you hoard?
That's probably it. Now talking about, I actually hoard monitors. I tend to hoard all electronics. Anything that's I'm afraid of throwing away ends up around my floor. All right.
Fire away.
Let's check this out. So I have an MR, which this is what it was previously doing, was if you're in the new web IDE, which is based off VS Code, we had the little banner show up saying, hey, we want to switch to the legacy web IDE. And if you're in the legacy web IDE, you could switch to the new web IDE. But we in Editor have been living without a UX person for some time. But Marcel gracefully jumped in with changing the requirements. So this is round 2 of part 3. And so the goal is adding, instead of this alert thing, which looks wonky, he liked the idea of adding this sidebar that opens with that will automatically open on the right-hand side. Hey, we're going to switch editors, switch to the new web ID. You close the sidebar and that's all there. So it's great. So I have my part 3 MR here, which has the latest changes, except I have one test to write, which is a lot of these are straightforward, but this one, which is that whole empty state view with the button, which makes the calls. This one I haven't written a test for yet. I have the test, which was doing for the component, which is doing something very similarly in the other MR. So I think what I was gonna do was take that test, and then make it work here, and then fill in the gaps. So that was my strategy. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. And I'm gonna try to use as much editor features as I can to impress Chad. I'm gonna try to. I'm gonna feel so bad. So I'm gonna compare. I'm gonna get my previous.
Do it web IDE.
What do you say?
Are we gonna do it in the web IDE?
Oh
Or are we
gosh,
not?
jeez, I wish. I wish. No, this is just my local VS Code. I don't know if I really do wish, but yeah, that would be next.
I want to see you unplug your mouse and put it on the shelf behind you, Paul. Come on.
Oh man. Well, I'm a step ahead of you. I'm on the trackpad, so I could have just said okay. So this is the previous MR, and I'm going to compare it to master, which gives me these files changed, and I'm going to steal the one that had. So this one had. This is the function I was not really wanting to recreate the test for. It's not like it was hard. I just get lazy. So this is the spec for it. So what I'm gonna actually do is apply the changes here. So now I have this test for something that doesn't exist, but it's pretty close to what we need. Gosh, I don't know where to put all of y'all's lovely faces are taking up so much screen real estate. I wish I. All right, we're gonna keep plowing along. I'm getting distracted though.
You need a bigger monitor.
I guess so.
I'm gonna go on Amazon now.
Yeah, so that wow, if every pair programming thing ends up in Amazon ordering new equipment is like, okay, something's off here. Yeah, you all are like really taking up so much space. Here we go. All right, so I'm on my new branch, and the component we're trying to test is called switch editors view. So let me start by renaming this test and putting it to where it should live. This lives in components, switch editors view. So it's not switch web ID alert. It's called switch editors view spec. All right, so we have the spec here. It'd be nice to also open up the subject next to it. Okay. Great.
Can you kill the project nav now? Get more space.
This thing, yes, that's a good idea. That's wise. I'll just.
It doesn't go away.
It does. It does. Yes, it does. I just I think it'll go away if I tell it to. Yeah, but I don't think I want to go all. I could go all the way away. All right. I don't know. For some reason, it gave me some sense of security. Like I'm realizing I was holding on to it. Chad, thank you for encouraging me to let go. All right. Okay, so one of the wins of this last MR, this is the MR that was closed. One of the wins to it was I separated the logic from the presentation So this layout component, which you'll see references to in the old tests, this is all the presentation logic. Here, just for simplicity, I kept it all in one component because it wasn't that separation wasn't needed as much based on this approach.
And the larger context is we're planning on deprecating and deleting the entire legacy
This
web
is
ID.
Yeah, this is
So
very, so let's
don't
just,
polish, make it work.
okay, all right. All right, so I want to get rid of, I want to make this thing. Yeah, so this is actually triggering the switch preferences. So this will be, instead of emitting something from the layout, I can just find the button. So let's find the button. Let's replace this with find. Yeah, I'm just gonna call it find button. Oh yeah. I'm not gonna think too hard. Try not to think too hard in this. I do need GL button in here from, oh wow, GitLab UI. Okay, here we go. You all don't hear me type, do you?
Nope.
Okay. I'll type louder then. I'm joking. I'm sorry. Click. Okay. Yes, and so then there's a whole confirmation thing with this as well. Skip before unload. Oh yes, yes. So let me show you all the subject here so we can be a little bit more aware of what's going on. If something isn't clear, maybe we need to make it more clear. We show a confirm before you do this of, hey, do you really want to do this? You're going to lose whatever you're doing. And it's important that we do the confirm here. Let me just leave that aside. But the web IDE has an on before unload. So if I've made any changes, I don't want to have the user go through 2 clicks of, yes, I really want to do this. So this tells the IDE, skip before you're on unload. A little hacky, but it works. So that explains these lines in the test where we're just setting them up, these before unload things. They've been triggered. This is our request that we're setting up, where we get the user preferences path comes from, but here it's going to come from our Vue store. Previously it was being injected. So yeah, that's interesting. So this is going to need a store now, which previously we did not. And that's fine. Let's just create a new store thing, right? Set up store. Let's see, are we smart enough to do that? No, we're not. All right, that's fine. See, okay. Great store. I'm looking for spec in IDE kind of thing. When another IDE tests how we've done this. Is that not how it works? Okay. Cool. Yeah, it looks like we just import from IDE stores. Import create store from IDE store. Store create store. Great. But let's go ahead and
So you could memorize the key binding to just auto show and hide it.
okay. Well, do you know how to? I don't know. All right, I was gonna try to Vim quiz you, but I'm starting to question my Vim fluency myself. So I like to just set store state like right away. And I like to just set it this way because Vue is all reactive. The Vuex store stuff is all reactive. It's kind of easy to
I
do.
mean, this is like as a legit meta criticism / comment. For people following along, like seeing the entire code context is important. And right now you're like doing the scroll back and forth thing. Your eyes follow it because you know what you're doing, but it's harder for other people to follow it when you can't see the whole width of the
Yep.
code and when it's jumping around horizontally.
Thanks for
So-
doing that. I appreciate that. Thanks for mentioning that. And that's fair. And I want to try to make this so I'm testing, does this make sense as well? But because the component depends on the state, this is a collaborator we have to initialize. And I like to just directly set it. And especially because we just need it with some value that's not really ever going to change. So there's just some test value. So that works out. But now we've set up the store and I can just very easily use this here when I mount it. Do we have to do view local view, use view? Do we have to do that?
No,
No?
we need to use Vuex, but you don't need local view for that.
Oh, got it. So I still need to do view, use Vuex though, right?
If I remember correctly, then you do.
Let's try it out. Let's see what happens. Let
I'm
me-
not sure anymore.
Let me try.
I don't work with.
You do, and you also need to pass the store into your create component.
Okay, I did pass the store into here.
Good.
That's so interesting, Natalia, to like to hear you say that.
But I don't work with Vuex anymore because I'm
or
I'm moving everything to Apollo.
Yeah, that there's core areas that we still use in app. It's like I've never written a backend migration, I don't think, after 3 years at the company. I haven't worked with the database closely.
Impressive.
Oh, wait. Oh, geez. All right. Switch editors view. This isn't called the right thing anymore. That's the downside when you do things like this. Oh, and props is
Would it matter though? Because it's the default export. You can name it whatever.
yeah, it shouldn't matter. You're totally right there. It looks like it's not finding the button, which is weird, but I don't have any props.
It doesn't find the button because you didn't stub the empty state, and I think it has more slots than default one. If you could show me the code of the empty state, please, on the template.
On
The template, just scroll down to the template of the component. So you can see that we have GL empty state that has 2 named slots, and view test details. In the previous version, it did suffer with the slots, so you would need either use mount or just stub the GL empty state.
totally
I
right.
prefer stubs, but up to you.
No, I love it. Yes, that is the thing it needs. Thank you. I get so hyper focused. I was like, the button's there. How's it not showing up? That was exactly what it needs. So right now I have not added use Vuex because I'm questioning if I need to do that. Looks like I don't need to do that. So great. Cool. Let's see if we can run more of the tests. I was just running one test. Let's run all the tests. Switch editors. The only reason I named these the same thing as my main imports is because I don't want to think about what to name them. But I realize that it makes it go out of style sometimes, but I don't care a whole lot about that. Yes, so previously, this is an interesting side effect with the test. Previously, we used the same alert for both cases. Now, that is not the case. We only ever are not using the new version because this is only ever loaded on the legacy web ID. So Do I have any? This, I was trying to just determine we were passing the right value here. But since this doesn't ever change, and this doesn't ever change, I kind of feel like I can get rid of this. But before I do that, I want to make sure I've moved this to have been called with. I want to move it to where else we're adding an assertion to it. Oh, I don't have it here. And response is successful. Yeah, here, it calls requests, or I don't know what we want to call it. Use legacy web ID would be false because we don't want to use legacy web ID. Let me just skip you. Let's try this again. Yeah. All right, great. So we are handling, I believe, all the cases here. Yes, and oh yes, beautiful. And sorry. I'm getting choked up. It's just so beautiful. All right. Are you all familiar with this ignore while pending thing? Maybe not. So this prevents double confirmation boxes if you've clicked it multiple times. So anytime we have a event handler from the component going to a method, if this method is async, you want to really consider, do we need to ignore while pending? Because this means while one promise is pending, let's not re-trigger multiple ones based on. And so this fixed a lot of double confirmation issues with GitLab. But I have tests for this, which is nice, that I'm doing like, hey, we call again to assure we're only showing one confirm action. So like that kind of thing. So that's great. But I am noticing I don't have this loading state. I'm not testing this loading state on the button. So here, when I trigger this, it starts loading. Yeah. I'm gonna take Andrew's cat as a yes. Props loading to be true.
Nah, she didn't like it. She's leaving.
Ah, jeez. Oh, okay. Man. Can't even keep the cat's attention. That sounds like it's hard to do though. Cool. Great. So on default, it would not be loading. It is not loading. Right? Yeah, it's not loading. Cool. But then when we're finished, we should also not be loading. So when user accepts, when it calls the request, emits all this stuff, we would expect to not be loading, right? Right? Oh, let me stop running all this. Sorry.
Just the slight uncertainty in that, right?
Every single time you run unit tests, you're in this state of uncertainty.
Whew, man, all right. My perspective on reality is getting more and more affirmed. Cool. So that's great. We got loading captured. Cool. So now I think we're just in the very simple. Did we load our template as we expected. And so I'm just gonna put that here in. So previously I had these two different contexts because I was loading one with props and one without props. So I like to split it up that way, but now I don't have any props here and that's all fine. But I'll just keep it all here in default. I like that in general. So I'll just say we render empty state. All right. I'm feeling so much relief for some reason. Like I know this is gonna work. Let me add a little finder for the empty state. I like doing that too. Find component. There we go. Oh yeah, see, we don't even need props. Yeah. Great. Expect, find empty state, and then we'll assert on its props. Should have, yeah. Oops. Props. What do you all think? 2 equal props or 2 match object props?
Why are we even testing props here? Are they conditional? Do they change, or we just test the framework passes the props you told it to pass?
It's asserting that if this was emptied out, I would want to test to fail. So whenever I assert something is rendered, I like to, rather than doing like exists, I like to say it was rendered with these props.
Okay, I thought it's a bit excessive, but fine.
Oh yeah, I'm excessive. Oh gosh, yeah, like that's fine. But
Does
since
it have full coverage without this already?
it wouldn't, so that's why it's like, yeah, I want to make sure we pass in the values. We're creating this thing with the values that we said it would create it. It's like the difference between being to have been called with versus just to have been called. I want to try to be generally explicit, but if it's challenging, then I'm also eager to change it up. So I'm going to export this const. It's weird they're not all exported. Maybe I will just export them. Yeah, just export all of them. Yeah.
So this is the middle of the pyramid, the is stuff wired together in type safe in the right arity level of testing that you don't have to do in a type safe language, right?
It's a little more than that because it's not just type safety, because I am concerned about the values. Like I could be type safe, but not passing in the value could be emptied because I fat fingered the prop name or something like that. So
Yeah, if it's supposed to not be empty, then it, yeah.
but the value could be empty could be an allowable value in type land too. So it's, yeah. I need this from the state. So I need to add switch editor SVG path equals test switch editor SVG path. Although I think technically it would be that. All right, I'm going to my state to add it to there now. Switch editor SVG path. There we go. Cool. So I would expect this to be there. All right, let's run it.
May I add something unrelated to this test while we
Yeah.
are running? I
Sure.
think we don't need wrapper destroy anymore.
I think you're right too. Did I add it there? Yeah,
Yep.
you're totally right.
I do this all the time, and I already was told
Thanks.
like 10 times by reviewers
Oh,
that remove
nice.
this.
Because we have enable auto destroy. Something, oh, it's not in spec ID. That's why it's not showing up. But we have, oh, geez. Yeah, Vue test utils has a really cool enable auto destroy. So all of the wrappers, even if I create multiple, this is a big deal for me. Like even if we created multiple wrappers, accidentally, we would be able to destroy them all, which is such a huge win. Do you know who originally pushed this forward? This was Winnie's idea when we first were moving to Jest and Vue test utils away from Karma and everything. So it's like so great. Just now we're able to. I'm so happy. Like Ilya is like kicking all of these things through the goal. That's been really helpful. I'm really glad that we have that now. Thanks for the call out. Okay, cool. So we're rendering the empty state. That's great. And then I guess I want to just, we render the link. Like what do you guys like to do here? I mean, I clearly like to be really, I'm a completionist. I take my time and I like to get that 100% feeling.
Given that this code is not long for this world, if you're at full coverage, I would call it.
If I'm at full coverage,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to get to, man.
Well,
Trying to-
no. What lines of this are not covered? You know?
Link these texts, templates. I gotta cover
I mean,
it all.
are they invoked? Right. This is rendered.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yes. If I could, you're asking a great question, but the way I see it, if I could delete this and the test still pass, which means I would have a bug or missing functionality, we're missing some coverage. So I tried
Gotcha.
to hit a level of completeness, but I appreciate everyone's patience with this. I get it.
Let me play devil advocate and say create a snapshot test.
I could do that. I know. It's probably actually a really great idea. I should, right? Maybe that's just what I got to do.
No.
Oh, okay.
You're not just using mount extended and the testing library to make sure everything is accessibly named while we're here. Shame, Paul.
Oh man, you hit my limit, Andrew. You found it. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Should I do the testing library to do find by role link, or should I find by GL link?
That's a component.
Oh, it is. So it's not even, you're totally right. So I'm gonna have to do GL link anyways. I won't be able to do find unless I did the full mount, which is what you were saying, Andrew. How interesting. Okay, but this is a component. Let's just do it. Yeah. All right. Renders the link. Expect.
No. You need to do wrapper find component.
Thank you. Yes, let's do it. Here we go. GL link props. href. To be. So I don't have a value for this yet. We'll link it up in just a second. Pun intended. Test href equals test new web IDE href. All right. Nope. Yes. Okay. Wow. I'm glad I wonder what it was yelling at me about. Oh, because I didn't even have balanced parentheses. All right. And then we're going to render the text to be learn. Oh, I have this as a export. Oh, yes, man. 100%. Every day. All right. Nobody's going to want to send me their MRs after this. They're going to be like, gosh, you can't please that guy. Okay. It renders description. This is easy. I can do expect wrapper, or we had find empty state. This is the last one. Promise. To contain message. Oh, I haven't imported it yet. All right. It's gonna fail because I haven't hooked this thing up. This thing lives in links for some reason in this state is how it works, but it's not a big deal. State links equals pop. That should work now. Jeez Louise. What? Oh, it's not going to work because I don't think this is real.
So I was holding off from saying this, but like at this point, I would throw a regex in there, make sure it has the right word, done. Make sure that it says something that you want it to say, unless the implementation is wrong.
That's not how it works. I agree.
The test doesn't have to explicitly test all of the copy. You can just say, does it say generally this thing? Good. Okay. And if it saves you a lot of boilerplate and wiring together and trying to like share every field through a constant, I think it's more readable and maintainable.
Yes, I thought I had an issue with my test setup. The reason why this link wasn't being passed there, but I realize now it's actually in attributes instead of props, which is the situation. But yeah, I agree. This is why I also rely on a timer a lot, so I don't waste so much time trying to, yeah, boom.
Like the reason you exported all of those constants, like, dude, is there a reason they need to be constants as opposed to just, inline text? What's the other reasons?
I would be probably even go as far as not testing things that are rendered unconditionally. Because again, we are relying on the framework here. And if I put something in the text, I assume Vue is already tested enough to render something I put in the text, but that's up to Paul.
Right. So like if these texts had if the template has string literals, there would be like literally nothing to test. It's just,
yeah, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're totally, I like that. That is my preference, is not to import the constants and to leave the actual values here. I have a tendency to like, for me, the litmus test is, yes, I'm not testing that did Vue render it. I'm testing what I told Vue to render. So if I removed this and it didn't cause a test to fail, that gives, even though this is trivial, that makes me like, okay, we're just choosing not to test this. And that's fine. But things get more interesting when it's like for props. That's a more significant of a deal for me than that.
I agree for props, but imagine if you had a block of text, just a paragraph with some description, like some long text. Will you also test that it is present on the page? Like just P with hello, Paul.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like at that point, you're kind of just going through the routine for the sake of.
Yeah, I'm just being annoying. I know. I just want to understand where the line is between test, not test.
But
aren't props required? Can't you just say this prop is required?
It's a responsibility of the child component in this particular case, not the parent. Parent doesn't know if it's required. We don't dive into child component.
But if the child said that it is required, the empty state, okay.
Yeah.
So
for me, Natalia, to answer is like, if I spend more than 2 minutes on it, yeah, I'm out. If I can spend 2 minutes on it, I'm going to try to. But there's a whole lot we don't test here. Like we don't test all the classes, and that makes sense. The fact that we translate these strings starts to like, how often do we do this? And I think we've started, I don't know if we still don't lint for that, but sometimes there's been situations like, I wish we just had a test to just, that we didn't include the namespace in the string. Like there's those situations. But yeah, when things are just raw text, that's, if I'm reviewing a code, I won't ask someone to add a test just for raw text. If I'm writing my own code, I'm like, I'm going to try to, for 1 minute, just try to do it.
And those things, if it's lintable, like that's how you shouldn't write a test for it. Like we should add the linting and exclusions.
I don't know for that. Like, so this seriously isn't linted? Wow.
What if you want to use the pipe?
What if you want to use a pipe as a real stream?
Yeah.
I feel like it's pretty obvious.
You cannot say so about all the GitLab. Sometimes we need to talk.
I know. But
And,
like,
and I think spaces can have spaces in them too, right?
I
Like, well,
I'm not sure about that. Let's see.
I don't know if they actually can, but I think like the locale file just splits on the pipe and calls
I
it.
mean, it seems like if that's the problem, there should be a higher abstraction around this that takes 2 parameters and then it's type safe. There's like a, a version that takes the,
Now you're talking sense, but that ship has sailed. This is how we write translations. I don't see that changing.
Clearly, we need value dependent types so that you don't need 2 parameters. You can have like types based off the value of the string.
Yeah.
clearly.
When someone extends the string class to like namespace translatable string, that's when things get real. Well, thanks for helping me write that test, everybody. That was the missing piece for me. So that was helpful, and I appreciate the conversation. What'd you say?
We're not going to do the RSpec ones now.
RSpec test. Oh, I did the RSpec ones already. I actually did those first. So yeah, these can.
And
Wow.
I was going to try to be snarky and say, RubyMine, I can click and say run with coverage for jest and it does it, but I tried it. Like a simple one worked, but a test of a Vue component like blew up in some, you can't do an import that's not a module. So it failed. It's sort of halfway worked and gave me the for a simple non-Vue component coverage.
Yeah, I want to know what the coverage is. Watch me really try for this, and it's actually like 50% coverage, and then I'll be so depressed. I'm like, what am I doing?
And the real coverage will be like 20 because there are so many tests that don't test things on the unit test.
Like at Pivotal, it was
Like
TDD, and we test drove most stuff like from scratch, and you hit about 85 to 90%, like naturally if you TDD, and we never looked at coverage.
What were you saying, Natalia?
Yeah, sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, no problem. I was just saying that to improve our tests, we don't need to increase the coverage. We need to improve the quality of our tests. And it's like every single time I dive into code base that is 3 years old and older, purely depressing because I'm rewriting a bunch of unit tests. I just need to fix a component that doesn't test. And I'm not even sure if I break anything or not.
Yeah. Writing tests. I mean, I've done a number of these, like we're just gonna rewrite the tests for this old component. And it takes a good couple of hours.
Well, because when you don't write tests at the same time, and ideally TDD, nothing stops you from having that excessive coupling and lack of cohesion. So then when you try to add tests, you're like, oh man, like it's all mocks. I'm mocking this and mocking that. It's because you didn't have that TDD to enforce you to have loose coupling and high cohesion and not do bad things in the first place. That's my opinion.
No, but I think that TDD is a really good litmus test. So like here, clearly we're doing test hardening. And so for me, it's easy to get very obsessive about the completion of it. TDD really highlights what were the most valuable tests for this and the tests that used to build the thing. And that's a great litmus test for the tests that are actually important. And yeah, that's a practice that's interesting. It's hard.
And a lot of people that TDD, they'll like TDD and then they'll delete those tests. They're like, all right, these, like to Natalia's point, it's like, is this really ever going to break? No, delete the test. It's extra overhead and cognitive load. And I get it. I'm like, no, I'm a hoarder. It's a beautiful test. Why would I want to kill it? But kill it.
That's true. That's true. I can't wait. So we get measured by MR rates. I'm gonna try to push that we get measured by line count. So I'm just gonna write crazy amount of snapshot tests, and I'm joking. I know. All right. I'll catch you all later. Thanks for helping me. Bye.
Have a good one. See you later. Bye.